Hey, welcome to the Louder Than Words podcast. I'm Tony Gaskins.
And I'm Caleb Curl.
Now, we're coming to you because, as you know, the podcast space, it is all over the place. And to be honest with you, I just said to myself last week, no one else needs a microphone. But right after that, it was pressed upon my heart to reach out to my good friend Caleb and say, hey, man, what do you think about us jumping back in, because we visited this before and it just
Yeah.
wasn't the right timing. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I wanted to circle back with all of the noise, with everything that's being said, and just bring a different perspective. And I couldn't think of anybody better than Caleb because I've known him for years and I see the way that he lives and the way he honors his truth and his growth and his process. And I feel I'm the same way. So we want to start this and we're going to do everything in our power because we're both busy individuals. We're both business owners. We're going to do everything in our power to address the topics at hand, the things that y'all bring to us, the things that we see online, and just provide a fresh perspective. Now, Caleb, when you think about the podcast space, I want to hear from you as well about where do you think it's at and where do you think that we could possibly add value?
Whew. It like you said, it's all over the place. You got so many people talking. And even just with the name of our podcast, Louder Than Words, you got a lot of people that get online and they talk a certain way, but then they live a different life when they get off camera. And there's pros and cons to that, right? Like we all are playing a role in a way when we get online, but the influence that it carries, especially I think when I think about the men today and specifically the young men, the roles of listening to the wrong influences online, even within pop culture and music. You got a lot of people that are easily influenced by these things and don't recognize that some people are just playing a character or playing a role, and that can be very dangerous. And especially within our community, I think it's sending a lot of young men in the wrong direction. And I think it's an opportunity for us to be able to share our perspectives again, both knowing each other's lifestyle off camera, and outside of media, and knowing like who we are in our day to day, but being able to bring that to the internet and explain, hey, your actions in the life that you live truly says something and means something. It's okay to get on here and to be able to talk in theory and to put things out, but focus on how you really live. Take the knowledge that you get from the internet and education, and not just the entertainment, and better yourself in the real world. I think that's the thing today. As we continue to go deeper into this digital age, it's almost hard to unplug from the matrix and understand the difference between what's real and fake, and what's good for you, and what things to spit out.
And one of the things that I'm thinking about too is manhood. While you was talking, I had hit the mute on my mic because I'm hoping it's not echoing, like because I'm hearing you. I don't know if it's going back in, so I had hit the
Okay.
mute. So we'll see. But one of the things I'm thinking about is manhood and just who are we as men? I wish we could come up with a name for the space that we're in and what we're trying to represent, because you hear red pill and MGTOW and all of this, but
Yeah. Yeah.
and you said before the word that I don't really fully understand, and maybe you can explain it, but you were talking about like priesthood,
Okay.
and I don't understand the origin of it, or where or when God dropped that in your spirit, but that's what I'm thinking, like something different, because it has become so normal to be an angry man, like to
Yeah.
be angry at women,
Yeah. Yeah.
angry at the another race,
Yeah.
angry
Yeah.
at another religion, and like macho and alpha is like this angry guy who just focused on money, focused on sleeping with a bunch of baddies
Yep.
and all of this. But I feel like there's another space, a different type of man that needs to be raised up, which is a man of integrity, a man
Yeah.
of character, a man of value, a man who values living a clean, pure lifestyle without feeling the need to please other people. And but I don't know if the priesthood is still in your spirit. But tell me, let's talk about that. And what do you mean by that when you said that?
Yeah, I think it's a part of it. I think, and I'm forever learning. I don't ever want to feel like I'm tied to an absolute, but just as I'm on my journey and gathering new knowledge and information, just my understanding today that for me as a man, my goal is to strive to be a provider, a protector, and a priest. And for me, it's spirit, mind, and body. I would put those same three in that same category of spiritually, of course, would be priesthood. The mind being able to provide knowledge, integrity, character, and being able to protect with the body, but also protecting my body and knowing my body. So I think it's just knowing self and all of those three categories. But then when it comes to um, how we govern ourselves in the world and we deal with other people, being able to operate in unison with all of those. Going back to what you said about the world being very alpha and macho today, it shows that somebody's just stuck on the protecting, and the body on the physical plane. They're just operating off of their testosterone, but they're not operating in unison with mind and spirit, And I think that's the difference that we're trying to bring to the space is show that we're all spiritual beings having a physical experience, but we get stuck just on the physical plane. And especially as men, we're visual creatures. So we get stuck on making money, how many women we can get, external validation through wealth and having means and resources, and nothing wrong with that. Just doing it in a healthy way, right? And I think that that's what it is that we are on our journey as men who are constantly evolving and growing. Not to say that we're perfect, but I think for us both is that we're striving for perfection. We're striving to continue to get better and evolve. And so I would look at you as a priest, right? I see you as a priest within your household, within leading your family as a spiritual leader, leading your kids, leading the community around you, as well as online. You have a covering, right? And I think that's our duty as men. I think that's our God-given birthright. And when I think about Adam and Eve in the garden, like Adam was given dominion, but what is dominion? That's an ability to lead. That you have a responsibility, you have a burden on you, right? But it's a good burden. You've been equipped naturally with all of the innate abilities to be able to lead. But I think the world gets us so caught up and distracted. It has many of us as men just thinking only with what's between our legs and not combining spirit, mind, and body to be the totality of a priest, a provider, and a protector. So that's my perspective. But you as a father, when you think about priesthood, and you have two boys, what does that look like for you now that I done kind of broke down my perspective on it? What are the tools and resources that you're giving your boys in light of you being a priest, but also training them up to follow in that same light? And maybe you might use a different word, but kind of the same context.
And I get what you're saying, because one of the things I'm always thinking about is transparency. And I actually saw it yesterday online. This guy that I met, I got a meeting coming up. He posted this thing and it said, the best marketing or the best sales tactic is telling the truth. And it
Mm.
was crazy to see that in words, because that's the life that I've lived and in front of my sons. Like, they have seen me at my worst and they have seen me at my best.
Yeah.
So they've seen me when I'm angry. They've seen me when I'm just not myself and
Yeah.
I'm in spiritual warfare, to where I'm snappy or I'm too aggressive, too raw, and not like balancing it with gentleness and love. And they've seen me operate from trauma. And that was a short season. And after that, I explained it to my oldest son. And then I showed it to my youngest son, of how we go through as men, and the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, and how we should continue to grow or evolve, whichever word a person wants to use. And my oldest, he's 17, so he watched me go from this season of spiritual warfare to seeing this season of love and gentleness and chivalry and sacrifice, to the point that it inspired him. And he would send me messages like, hey dad, keep going, let's go, like, and just really motivated. And I saw that transfer. Like he had a leadership summit the other day, and it was him and four young ladies on the stage. They went up to speak in front of a audience, and none of the young ladies had prepared anything. No one had anything, and he took the lead and jumped up and gave a speech. And it was an impromptu speech about leadership. And he said the principal of the school absolutely loved it. And for him to be able to do the number one most feared thing in the world, which is public speaking, and to be 17 years old and to do it impromptu. And I think about myself failing oral communications class in college because I couldn't give a 2-minute speech, impromptu speech. I was drenched in sweat, stuttering. I got an F in the class and had to take it over. And so to see that, it shows me that if we are honest as men, transparent as men, and we share our struggles, and we grow through it, but as we learn, we teach, that is going to change the way men live lives. And today, what I'm noticing with our leaders is a lot of men are still covering up their mistakes and masking their pain.
Mm,
So all the youth see is this facade, this bravado, machismo,
yeah,
and it's not real
yeah,
because you look strong in the light and then you dying in the dark. And so that's really what I'm trying to do. To sum it up in one word would be transparency. Just be transparent.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think just in general, it's rare to hear from men. And then it's rare to hear men really speak their truth. And that's one thing I learned from you, honestly, bro. I remember the first time we met. It was a conference that you had in Dallas, and we sat down for dinner, and it was our first time like really having a deep talk. And I was floored at how honest and transparent you were with me about everything. You told me about all of your successes that were going on, but you also shared with me your failures. And that like really it taught me so much because I was so used to people putting on their best and just performing, but you were just like, no, this is who I am for real, that as Tony Gaskins, and like that truth is what men need. We need to be able to hear and also to see the totality of what makes us men, because oftentimes we see the lead, like now we hear about the news and knowledge of MLK and the life that he lived behind closed doors, and so for a long time, at least for myself, because I didn't know this information. Some people that were maybe in Chicago or different areas knew this information. But anyway, just finding that out is kind of like, nah, man, that wasn't Martin Luther King, because you see him in this light, in this perspective of this great man. But we're all imperfect. We all need God just like everybody else. But to show the totality of our weaknesses, I think that's where we really grow, and we stop playing this superhero figure where we just Superman all the time, but we can also be Clark Kent. We also got that regularity to us, that nerdiness, that other side, right? But just being honest about our weaknesses, but also not staying stuck in stupor either. Acknowledging that, hey, this is where I fell and I went wrong, but not keep practicing those same mistakes. Being able to be transparent as men, and I learned that with you as well, being accountable, saying, hey, bro, like I slipped up in this area of my life, and I just want to be honorable and admit this, especially being around you, knowing that you got a brand and this is what you got going on. I want to bring this to you, and then you also receiving me in love and saying, hey, bro, like it's okay, but tighten up though at the same time, like keep sharpening, keep becoming better versus just like, bro, you just a man, like just keep doing what you're doing. So man, I like what you said about the transparency. I think that's where real growth takes place across the board.
Right. And Caleb, now how old are you now?
I'm 30. Just
And I'm 40. So for those who see this, we are a decade apart, which is sounds like a long ways, but also a short ways. But that gives us slightly different perspectives. It's almost like big brother, little brother, although most parents won't have children 10 years apart. So that right there is a unique thing. Also, I'm married and I've been married 17 years, and Caleb is a single man living like Apostle Paul. and seeing the world from that lens, in the sense of like, hey, where is she? When is it time? And so we have different perspectives, and that's what I love about it, because we're able to hit on both sides. We're
Yeah.
able to talk about the single life, the married life, that 30-year-old generation, the 40-year-old generation, which some people will put in the same generation, but the perspective is important, because a lot of times we are only around people who see the world just like us. And another thing I want to point out is just our innate, or not necessarily innate, but our upbringing differences of how, for me, I'm from Arbondale, Florida. And Caleb, you're from
From Pensacola, Florida, North Florida.
Pensacola, Florida. So we both are Florida boys, but Pensacola is like what? Is it like open land? Is it inner city?
No, it's a small city. Small city. It's a little bit bigger than Auburndale for sure. But yeah, it's a small city and kind of a small beach town too. We're known for our beaches.
Right. And your mom and dad did what?
My dad's a full-time pastor, and my mom is a social worker.
And my dad, he was blue collar worker and a pastor for he was a pastor for I think 14 years of my upbringing. And then my mom, she worked in like corporate, but entry level in the insurance industry for I feel like my whole life. And but Arbondale was very the blacks in Arbondale weren't really evolved. Like we were very off the plantation. If I could say that, in a sense of like we were unlearned. Like we didn't have we I probably knew one family of color that had like broke the barriers,
Wow.
gotten through the glass ceiling. And that young man, because of his upbringing, he ended up marrying outside of his race, because there really wasn't any relation between the way he saw the world with black women. It was completely different.
Hmm.
And then me, although my family, like my mom's side of the family, was like her siblings, a good amount of them were addicts, whether it was drugs or alcohol. They picked their poison. So I say that to say, I want the people to understand, when you hear me, I may be a little more country, a little more rugged, even our style of dress. Caleb, he can get clean, very dapper, went to Howard. And although he became an entrepreneur, that's a different perspective as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this right here, is the thing that we have strengths and similarities, but we also have very vast differences.
Yeah.
And so you enlighten me. And one of the things I picked up from you is like your upbringing and your parents, however they were raised, like whatever they learned, whatever that outlier perspective was that they got, that they instilled in you, it blows me away, because I never really meet black men from Florida that's like you, that have like the level of professionalism, the level of confidence. And the number one thing that I picked up from you, and it sounds crazy, it's because it seems small, but it was something I struggled with as a kid, because I used to walk around with my head down all the time. And not only would my head be down, I would be frowning. And my mom, she said to me one time, and I still remember it, because my we real where I'm from. She said, "Boy, pick your head up. People gonna think you dumb."
Hmm.
And what does that mean? Like, and I said in my head, or I might have said to her, I want them to think I'm dumb. I don't want nobody to bother me.
Yeah.
And so I would just walk around with a mean mug so no one would speak to me, because I had no interest in talking to anybody,
Hmm.
speaking to anybody. But one of the things I learned from you was eye contact. Like, and I tell that to my son, I tell it to other people. I say, I've learned from Caleb Curl eye contact. And what that means to me is confidence. Not, it doesn't even mean respect. Like it means respect, like you respect who you talking to, but it also means confidence. Because to make eye contact, you got to lift your head up and you got to look somebody in the eye. And when you look them in the eye, you're expressing supreme confidence. And what I've noticed when I started doing that is people would like start blinking really fast and they would look away. And then you would see like where someone else may not really be confident and
Hmm.
may not really be comfortable in their own skin. And so that's something right there that I want us to, we'll get to dive into on future episodes, because in my opinion, that is a superpower. And as Black men, we typically either cower in the world or we show up with a false sense of confidence,
Yeah.
but it's
Yep.
actually weakness and arrogance and not true confidence. And
Yep.
so I want you to touch on that, of like where that came from. That strong posture, head up, shoulders back, and looking someone directly in the eyes without breaking eye contact when you're talking to them. Like, where did that come from? Can you identify the root of that?
Yeah, my dad, and I give credit to both of my parents, just strong parents. My dad wasn't some man that was super educated and went off to college. My dad was just a hardworking, blue collar man, went to the military and came back and got into trucking and then pastoring and then had a small business at one point in time. But I just remember being a kid and like my dad taking me around other men, and he would teach me how to greet them. He said, hey, lift your head up and speak up. Sometimes I'll be mumbling like, hey, how you doing? He's like, no, speak up, use your voice, you're a man. Give a firm grip, give a firm handshake. Or we would go to, I remember just being a kid and going to check out at Kmart, and he would give me the money and make me, check out and say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir. Certain things that we do in the South, and but just teaching me those mannerisms and just being there and being present in my life and showing me healthy masculinity through words, but also actions, because I would also observe him and I would pay attention to how he treated people and how he would go places. And also just even, knowing how to put on a suit and tie. That was something that my dad taught me as well, is like understanding that there's a time and place for everything. When it's time to do business and going into the bank, I remember my dad teaching me about credit and being able to use credit to leverage in business. And he was like, hey, when we go to the bank today, we're going to put on a suit and tie. So just little things like that, having my father in my life and then my mom reassuring what my dad was teaching was a blessing, and I'm thankful for that privilege to be able to have had a father in my life growing up and to be able to see and feel his masculine presence within our household and just the move that he walks and his demeanor. And so I just picked those things up and I just carried them on. And also my dad's military background. My dad was Army infantry. And so my dad was very, just as far as discipline, he didn't play the radio. He was serious. Even just when I was coming up, I remember I wanted to wear like baggy clothes. I wanted to sag my pants and look a certain way. My dad wasn't with that. And it makes sense now as an adult. I used to be so mad as a kid, like, man, dad, how come I can't, get earrings and wear my hair how I want to and just do whatever? But I understand that he was raising me as a boy to be a man and understanding what I'm going to face in this world as a Black man and understanding that not all people are going to judge me by the color of my skin, but most will, right? Because we're social animals and creatures. And so he was giving me those tools at an early age to set me apart. Not that I'm better than anybody else, but teaching me how to be my very best and to be able to present myself and to step out with confidence as who I am. Because you're right. And specifically within the South, to kind of touch back on some things that you said, man, that's why I was so impressed when I met you, to meet a Black man that was articulate and that worked with his mind. Coming from the South, a lot of the skills and trades and industry are blue collar, hardworking, labor intensive, work. And that's just part of the culture of the South. and trying to make it up out of that. The tools and resources that my father gave me, and then being able to meet other people like yourself has just have helped me to sharpen myself, and then going into different rooms, being able to network and to continue to level up using those tools, learning how to use my mind, and using my physical features of my eye contact and giving a firm handshake. That's something that even as I meet ladies, I don't mean to do it, but it's just programming at this point in time. I don't generally hug on the first meeting if I don't know you. I present my hand, I give you a handshake, but that's something that women will say, like, "Oh, firm handshake," or sometimes they'll joke like, "Dang, you gonna take my hand off, huh?" But just certain cues and just things that my parents instilled in me growing up. And something else, going back to something that you said earlier, one thing that my dad always taught me, he said, because my dad's a pastor, and so, just like I imagine how your sons look at you, they see you online, but then they also see you at home, right? And so I didn't see my dad as some religious figure. I saw my dad as my dad. I saw him as a spiritual being. And so, I was like, "Dad, like, I want to be like you when I grow up." I used to say that. And he's like, "Son, the greatest thing that you can ever do and the best sermon that you'll ever preach is the life that you live. You don't have to scream and yell to people about God and what you believe, show them through your actions." And so I think to sum it all up, man, is just upbringing, having a healthy masculine figure in the household that is present, that cares, and the knowledge that he had, and the upbringing that he went through and the way he saw the world. He did his best to sharpen me and to prepare me as a young man to enter from a place of boyhood to manhood as best as he possibly could, along with my mother, instilling the same values.
And the key, what you said, and that's what I'm hoping we can inspire with this podcast, is fatherhood. That the men who see this will take their role as a father more serious.
Yeah.
Because I remember telling my mom at a young age, I was probably early 20s or maybe 18, 19. And I said to her, I said, Mama, if I get a prostitute, which I never slept with a prostitute, never will. But I said, Mama, if I get a prostitute pregnant, I am going to marry her and raise my child.
Hmm.
And it meant so much to me because I saw my father in the home every day. And the reason why I work with my mind is because my dad worked with his hands, but he was the type of person to have a hard life to give everyone else a soft life.
Hmm.
And so he never took me outside to have me work with my hands. And he never like pushed me overly in sports. He would take me out and train with me and work with me, but he didn't live through me in sports like a lot of dads. I see a lot of dads doing that at with my sons at soccer. A lot of the dads live through their son. And it was times where my wife was frustrated because our son wouldn't be as good as the other boys. And I would tell her, it's all going to come in time. Like, they got the foundation. I'm not going to be out there every day with them drilling in their head about sports because life is bigger than that. And now she sees our oldest son, which I didn't do a lot with him outside. We did go out there from time to time, but he's a starter on his team. He plays the whole game. He got a lot of interest from Division I schools. And so I learned a different side of fatherhood. And I think that's a beautiful thing too, because my dad he wore a suit, but he never taught me about a suit or a tie or anything like that. And I feel like for him, it's because he was the baby of a family. His mom died when he was like 7 or 8. And then his dad died when he was in the army. And as you said, that is like, okay, your dad went to the army. My dad went to the army. Your dad was in trucking. My dad was in trucking. And your dad became a pastor. My dad became a pastor. So I see
Yeah.
these black men who don't know each other, but both Florida boys,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the path that we give him. But there are some Malcolm Gladwell outlier type things that happen with men and women as we walk through our journey. And somewhere along the way, your dad bumped into somebody that taught him about presentation and how you do business and credit. And that's an outlier perspective because a lot of black people in Florida didn't get that.
Right. Right.
So I
Yep.
didn't learn what a credit score was, Caleb, until I was like 25.
Really?
You learned about this as a kid. Like I did not learn like financial literacy where I'm from in my family, not just my household, but like my whole family. It
Yeah.
was not a thing. And
Yeah.
so that's why we're gonna have to do some episodes on that too. And maybe bring in some other experts, some experts on financial literacy, because so that we could help raise young men who may not have a father in the home.
Right. Right.
And to the women who see this, don't be discouraged if your son's father isn't in the home. We're not going to be on here cursing and acting a fool. So your young man, if he's of age of understanding, whether that's 10 years old, 12 years old, 15-year-old, you can have him watch these episodes. And we promise to be good role models. And you'll know if it's an episode where we talking about adult things like relationships or something that he may not be there yet. So you don't have to have him listen to that. But I want to help raise those young men who don't have a father, or they have a father who he may not be in a place to where he can express everything he's thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
And so if you're a man watching this and you got a son and you've been telling him the same things, because Caleb, you said it. Now, when you got out the house, did you ever get earrings?
I did. I snuck off and did it when I was in high school. We used to real quick. So there is a distinct difference too between North Florida and South and Central Florida. It's big cultural differences. But anyway, we would go to Orlando every year, and so I would sneak and go to the mall. We go to the mall on the field trip, and I get my ears pierced, and I wear them while I was on the trip. But I knew by the time I got back home, my dad was picking me up to take them out of my ear. But I snuck and did some things, just wanting to find myself, wanting to fit in, like I think that's a major thing that we're trying to broadcast and point out is just how influential and influenced kids are at an early age, right? Like the influence of kids influencing one another and just picking up on those things. And you want to go to school and fit in with like, oh, them the new shoes that everybody wearing. Okay, I want to get a pair of those because you want to feel like somebody. And so many other things. But man, I tried it, but I knew enough that all right, I ain't gonna try my dad because I know how he is.
I
So
say that because my son's 17, he's asked me for earrings. And I'm just like, I never got my ears pierced, but it wasn't because of my parents. I don't even recall ever asking my dad. What happened was the other side of influence. I had two homeboys growing up. One of my guys that I knew from kindergarten, and he was raised by a single mom, and he had an older brother. And so he could kind of live his life and do his thing. And his mom was the type of mom who she'll do whatever for her son. So he came to school in Tommy Hilfiger, which was expensive.
yeah,
And his house was like a third of the size of my house, or maybe half of the size. And I didn't have Tommy Hilfiger
yeah,
at that time. I got it later, but he had Tommy Hilfiger and like nice shoes and stuff. And I'm like, man, how's his mom making this happen? Like, because she's just a single mom, and his dad was in prison from, I guess, birth. Like we never met him or nothing. And I think he's still in prison to this day. Well, I looked at him as like a strong, confident individual. And when the earring thing came in style and everybody was getting earrings, I looked at him, he didn't have earrings. And I felt he was tougher than me. I felt like he was more confident than me. I felt like he was stronger than me just as a young man. He wasn't better than me in sports, but just his aura and his confidence, the way he walked and moved was different because I was very shy, quiet, introvert. And then I had another homeboy who was a little softer in sports, but he again could do whatever he wanted to do because he had kind of like a hood street type of dad. He had hood street brothers, and his mom was real chill. He didn't have earrings either. And so it actually wasn't my dad why I didn't get them. I don't even know if I ever asked him. I did the magnet ones, but it was because two of my homeboys that I saw strength in
wow,
and swag in didn't have
yeah,
them. So I'm like, why would I get them if my dogs don't have them?
yeah,
And I never got them. And then as I got older, I appreciated it. And it's kind of one or the other because you don't have tattoos, do you?
no,
And I have like maybe 4 or 5 tattoos. It's under my shirt, like one here, one there, one here, one there, and one across my stomach. And but you can't see it because I didn't do like the sleeve.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got that first tattoo because of the R&B singer Tyrese. He he was a heartthrob to the ladies.
Yeah.
And when he came out, I think it was Sweet Lady was the song that he was singing. And I was watching a video one day and he's singing Sweet Lady. And if I remember correctly, he like leaned against the wall and slid down the wall singing. And we were built the same, like kind of like slim but muscular.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
ladies loved Tyrese back
Yeah.
then. And so I was like, okay, what's the difference between him and me? Oh, he got tattoos. So when
Yeah.
I got 18 and I went to college to play football, I got my first tattoo and I did it in a deflective way. I got John chapter 8, verse 7, I think it is. He who is without sin cast the first stone. So I did that as like a lawyer to trap my parents to where if they had something to say, what do this say? He who is without sin cast
Right.
the first
Right.
stone.
Right.
And they seen it and they were just like, oh my God. Well, all right. But they didn't really care.
Yeah.
And so, but again, that speaks to influence.
Yep. Yep.
Why you got your earrings, why I got a tattoo.
Yep.
And that's what I just seen this somewhere. Oh, a young lady coming out with a book called Above the Influence.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that's what, man, we could name the podcast that too.
That's a good name.
But that's what we kind of representing today is
Yeah.
trying to be above the influence, like not doing what every other person. Because I came to you one time, was like, Caleb, here go this industry right here. It ain't for me, the multi-level marketing. But these people, I got a client that I'm ghostwriting a book for. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah.
She making 500 grand a month. And then my other client who I'm ghostwriting his book, he making 300 grand a month. And I'm like, man, you young, you could do it. And you were like, no, that ain't for me. Like you didn't care about the money.
Yeah.
Like, and because you didn't, for whatever reason, didn't want that to be a part of your brand. So when I seen that, I was like, man, okay, I know I'm the type to not worry about how other people making money and what they're doing and the systems they're using, the funnels they're using. I'm gonna do it my way. But then when I saw you was the type, because I presented it to another guy and he jumped in. I mean, he made good money and stuff, but he jumped right on in. But then when I came to you with it, because it was like I was already making money and I wanted to see other people make more money.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was a quick entryway, and then you could segue to being an author or a speaker.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you was above that influence. And so in something like that, when we speaking about culture, what do you tell yourself or how are you able to remain an anomaly, as a black man? Like how are you able to remain anomaly in your own way?
Yeah, yeah. I think it goes back to just my upbringing. I really want to give my parents the credit. That's something that I remember asking my dad, like, because growing up, I see my dad with his shirt off and muscular and in front of the mirror and things. And I say, Dad, how come you don't have tattoos? Because I also see some of my uncles or other people that had tattoos. And, I would question it, look at it and see it as kids. You're observing everything. And my dad, told me one day, he's like, son, you're an original. He's like, remain an original. Don't become a carbon copy. And something he'd always say is like, man, he's like, you got a light in you. He's like, you can't see yourself, because growing up, I always felt this like purpose, this something to influence people. And it hit me one day. And I think I shared it with you that my purpose is to influence the influencers and recognizing that we all play that role of being influenced, but we can also influence other people as well for the right reason. But I think now as an adult and now being 30 and really knowing myself, I recognize that I'm rare, and not in a braggadocious way, but I know that I'm not like a lot of people, and I prefer to be that way. I like that I'm somewhat of a unicorn, and I go against the grain, and I'm kind of a black sheep, using all the words, but I recognize my value, and going back to what we were talking about earlier of tying everything together with spirit, mind, and body, I've been able to explore every aspect of myself and fall in love with me, right? Not in love with what the world wants me to be, because you're right, it's easy to be susceptible to like, man, if I make a lot of money doing this thing right here, that ain't really me, but I'll just get the money from this, and then I'll buy X, Y, and Z to present and look a certain way, to get love and attention and likes, from the world, But that just never sat right in my soul, because I have ventured off the path and tried to be something that I'm not, and I didn't feel peace, I didn't feel purpose, I didn't feel like I'm really being the fullness of who Caleb Curl is supposed to be. And so I just try and remain an original, and I try to encourage other people to do the same, to remember that you are a spiritual being having a physical experience. You're in this world, but not of it. Don't become another copycat of what is being pumped out in the music, and mainstream media telling you how to be as a man. Learn to sit and think for yourself. Think. I think that's what it is. Is I spend a lot of time by myself. I'll go hang out and socialize with people, but I know that I draw my strength from being alone, and that introverted nature, that intuitive nature within me. That's where I've been able to see myself. So I notice when I go around the crowd too much and I'm around a lot of people, I'm like, man, their energy is rubbing off on me, and too much circulation makes the price go down. So I recognize within myself that, hey man, I need to separate myself so I don't become like other people. When I go around people and they feel my presence, they're like, man, there's something different about you, But if I keep going around you, if I'm not strong, then you're gonna rub off on me and I'm gonna be where you are, and vice versa. But that's something else that my parents would always teach me. They're like, hey, be careful who you hang around, because I grew up in a black community, and I was split between going to private school up until sixth grade, and then my parents wanted me to be socially well rounded, so they sent me to the local neighborhood middle school that was predominantly black. And so those different dynamics of going from being the minority and then to seeing everybody that looks like me, but I also don't fit in because I don't talk like them, and various other things. um it made me realize at an early age that I'm different regardless. I started to question those things and recognize it. At first was just physical, that I would recognize like, man, okay, I'm around all of these white people at school and my skin is different. I'm different here. Now when I go around people that look like me, what's different is my personality. So now I'm starting to, as a kid, starting to break down who I am and spirit, mind, and body. And as I've gotten older, I've been able to tap in more to my spiritual side, and understanding that we are all originals, but we are all programmed to be what the world wants us to be, to continue to move in a way that keeps the power dynamic in the way that it is. And so again, I just try and remind myself that I'm different and I want to remain different. And for me, my foundation is my belief in God, and understanding that who God has called me to be is more important than what the world may want me to be. And honestly, something that I learned from you, bro, like seeing you move from a place of, I've seen you turn down money in the same sense of what you're talking about with MLM thing. I've seen you turn down money because you realize it didn't align with your purpose. And you're like, man, you always told me like pursue purpose over profit. And so just even along my journey in my 20s as a young man, being able to, to work with you, I realized that, okay, you know what, like let me not, because it's easy as men today just to chase something just because there's money in it, right? And there's a balance with it, to an extent, but not getting caught up in just chasing money, but being able to sustain yourself financially, but then also to be able to pursue purpose and then live out of your purpose. To I want to leave this earth knowing that I came to earth and I was who I was supposed to be, not who I was programmed and told to be. And so I think, just to sum it up, man, it's just being an original. But to pass it back to you, you've been from my perspective an original for a long time, man, because you stepped out and became an author. When going back to, we talking about being from Florida, and specifically where you from in Polk County. Polk County is rough. Polk County, it goes down, man, and y'all are a large area. And having been down that way, the influence of a lot of people and a lot of black men, it wasn't a lot of opportunity, from what I know of that area, if you weren't working in the orange groves growing up or you went to the streets. So how did you come from that type of environment, but you chose to use your mind and become an author and to build a brand and to be where you are today and remain an original through this all? Because even as you've made money, you could have reverted and went to a different direction. What keeps you at a place of purpose where you show up online consistently and you continue to push the same thing that you started with?
You know what? And I know we coming to an end here, but I it goes back to what you said of the upbringing. So it was like, although my parents didn't teach me everything specifically of what I do today, it was the stability. I was in one house my whole life. Never had to move around, never had to be without lights, be without water. I always had nice clothes, nice shoes. That stability allowed me to kind of cultivate my personality and who I am. I became a writer because I was an introvert. So I was a writer at a young age. I was writing poetry.
Mm,
And then them getting in the church, I was crying out to God at 10 years old. And although I became a prodigal son at 18 and went and tried to be a dope boy, be a what jack boy or what you call it, like hitting licks, what we call it in Polk County, and like stealing from stores basically, and getting in trouble and being a womanizer, like trying to fit in and do what everybody was doing, it falls back to what the word says of train up a child in the
mm,
way that he should go so that when he's old, he won't depart from it. So when it came down to it, it was like at my heart, I wanted to be a man of purpose. And when I met my wife and I spoke that to her, she kind of it anchored in her spirit. So when I tried to venture back to the street life at 23, right after we got married, she was like, "No, remember what you told me. You're going to be an author, you're going to be a speaker, you may be a pastor." And she held me accountable. And from there, it was like the it I believe in God because of not having a blueprint, like
mm.
not having a mentor.
Yeah.
Like my father has been my only real mentor, but what I'm doing, he had not done. He hadn't him starting a business was him starting his church, but he hadn't wrote a book. He hadn't started like a LLC for-profit company and became an entrepreneur. So I didn't know an entrepreneur personally, didn't know an author personally, and that's where I believe in the divine ordering of our steps when we are intended to be something and do something different. So I feel like with you and I, even us crossing paths, when you reached out to me at a young age, I saw something in you, and I feel like we two sides of the same coin, like under a lot of similarities, but also have different perspectives. And it all goes back to the root, the foundation, how we were reared and raised. And that also is an important message for every parent who sees this, to understand the importance of being a parent and what you're instilling in your child and how your child sees you live your life, because that is going to determine their future.
Yeah.
And we are living testaments to that. So now, hey, y'all, me and Caleb, listen, we will sit and talk, and y'all, it might happen one day. We'll sit and talk 2-3 hours
Yeah.
on anything, but just out of respect for your time and knowing that you working and you got family or friends or whatever you have to do, we're gonna try to keep these to around 45 minutes to an hour, unless there's just a flow happening and we got to go a little deeper. And we both are thinkers and speakers, so bear with us. We for your spring cleaning days, your long drives, your commute to work, or while you at work, if you can have a headphone in, just put our playlist on and just let it roll. And Caleb, anything you got for the people in our wrapping of our first episode?
No, I appreciate all of y'all tuning in. Continue to stay encouraged, be encouraged, keep moving and seeking purpose. I think anything is possible built on the foundation of God, and you can't fail. So I'm gonna leave you all with that till next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Now, wherever you are seeing this, lock in with us, subscribe, like, what have you, Stay tuned. We're going to be pumping these out. We don't have a set schedule yet, but we'll figure that out as we go. We very natural, authentic, and organic. So we will be learning and growing and evolving in this podcast space, doing it our way over time. So lock in with us, and we'll see you soon. God bless you.
Peace.